I'm Sarah. I'm 36 years old, and I never imagined my mother-in-law, Judith, could shatter my daughter Lily's heart so thoroughly. When Judith came to live in our Denver home 2 years ago, I did my best to welcome her, even as her subtle digs began to wear on me. But it was at the joint 13th birthday party for Lily and her cousins that Judith let her true colors show, with a single devastating sentence that sent my daughter running from the room in tears. A sentence that finally gave me the strength to make the most painful decision for the sake of our family's well-being. Before I dive into the rest of this story, I'd love it if you could let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and please hit that subscribe button if you believe in hearing more stories about protecting your family. My husband, Mark, and I have been married for 15 years. We were college sweethearts who fell hard and fast, eventually building a life for ourselves in the suburbs of Denver. Mark is 38, a passionate high school history teacher who often stays late to help students who are falling behind. He's the definition of patient and kind, almost always the mediator in any disagreement. Our daughter, Lily, is 13. She's a deeply creative spirit who can get lost for hours in her sketchbooks, crafting stories that bring a tear to my eye with their simple beauty. Her teachers are constantly praising her vibrant imagination and artistic flair. Lily has always been a sensitive soul, one to take criticism to heart more than most. But beneath that sensitivity, there's a quiet resilience that reminds me so much of myself when I was her age. Mark was an only child until he was 12, when his father remarried and his half-brother Robert came into his life. While they didn't grow up under the same roof, Mark and Rob managed to stay on decent terms over the years. Rob is now married to Jessica, and they have 14-year-old twins, Mason and Mia. The twins go to an expensive private school on the other side of town and are enrolled in what seems like a dozen extracurriculars, which Rob and Jessica love to broadcast all over their social media. Judith, my mother-in-law, was widowed about 3 years back when Mark's father died suddenly of a heart attack. After selling her home to clear out the mountain of medical debt, she told us she was in a tough financial spot and needed a place to live. Mark, without a moment's hesitation, offered up our home. I had my reservations, but I agreed. Family is supposed to help family, right? So we gave our guest room a complete makeover. Fresh paint, new curtains, a comfortable bed, all to make Judith feel at home. We shifted our daily routines, adjusted our dinner plans, and even reworked our weekends to make space for her. Our house is a modest 2-story place in a quiet neighborhood, with 4 bedrooms, a nice backyard, and a garage I converted into my office. I work as a freelance illustrator, which gives me the flexibility to take on projects and still be there when Lily gets home from school. It's no mansion, but we've poured a lot of love into making it a warm and comfortable home. The first red flags about Judith's favoritism started waving just a few months after she moved in. Whenever Rob would bring the twins over for Sunday dinner, Judith would have special little treats set aside for Mason and Mia, but she'd somehow always forget to get something for Lily. She could recall every single detail about the twins' school schedules, yet would draw a complete blank whenever Lily mentioned an upcoming art exhibit or a creative writing contest. They were small slights, but they were adding up, forming a pattern that became harder and harder to write off as simple forgetfulness. Lily tried so hard to build a bridge to her grandmother. She would eagerly bring her latest drawings to show Judith, hoping for a word of praise, or really just any kind of acknowledgement. "Grandma, look what I drew in art class," she'd say, holding up a watercolor landscape that was truly remarkable for her age. Judith would give it a cursory glance over the top of her phone, mumble a quick, "That's lovely, dear," and immediately go back to scrolling. But the moment Mason would show her his science project, or Mia mentioned her latest dance competition, Judith's entire face would light up with genuine fascination. "Tell me all about it," she'd insist, giving them her undivided attention. I tried to bring it up with Mark, subtly, on several occasions. "Have you noticed how your mom seems to treat the kids differently?" I'd ask after Judith had gone to her room for the night. Mark would just sigh, running a hand through his hair. "You're overthinking it, Sarah," he'd say. "Mom just connects more with the twins because they're into sports, like Dad was." I'd let it go, not wanting to push it and create a fight, but that knot of anxiety in my stomach just kept getting tighter with every one of his dismissals. Financially, we were doing okay, but we were always careful. Mark's teaching salary combined with my freelance income was enough to cover our needs. But after helping Judith with her moving expenses and covering some of her ongoing costs, our savings had definitely taken a hit. We weren't struggling, but we weren't splurging either. Any big purchase required careful planning. Judith gave us a minimal amount for household expenses, insisting that her Social Security check barely covered her prescriptions and personal items. Out of respect, we never pressed her for details or asked to see any statements. We just took her at her word. Rob and Jessica, on the other hand, were in a different stratosphere. They both had high-powered corporate jobs, lived in a gated community, took lavish international vacations, and never thought twice about buying the newest gadgets or designer clothes for the twins. I never held their success against them, but I couldn't help but notice how Judith would make these little comparisons that always seemed to leave Lily feeling small. "Mason and Mia are going to Italy this summer," she'd announce at the dinner table. "Isn't it just wonderful that Rob can provide those kinds of cultural experiences for his children?" The subtext that we were somehow failing Lily by not being able to match that just hung there in the air, unspoken, but felt by everyone. Despite this undercurrent of tension, we kept up with regular family gatherings. We had monthly dinners, celebrated holidays together, and had casual weekend get-togethers to keep the family tied together. Rob and Jess were pleasant enough, if a bit self-absorbed, and the twins were just typical teenagers, more interested in their phones than anything else. Lily often seemed to fade into the background at these events. She'd have fun, sure, but she'd often retreat to a quiet corner with her sketchbook, trying to start conversations with her cousins, but usually getting one-word answers in return. As Judith's stay stretched from a few months into a couple of years, this strange dynamic just became our new reality. I learned how to shield Lily from the most cutting remarks. Mark continued to make excuses for his mother, and Judith settled right into her role as the family matriarch who subtly controlled the emotional climate of our home. The delicate peace we'd built was fragile, but I thought we could keep it together for Mark's sake and for the sake of family unity. I had no idea that a single birthday party was about to shatter that illusion completely and force us to face a truth we had all been desperately trying to avoid. As luck would have it, Lily and the twins had birthdays all in the same month. Lily's was on the 10th, while Mason and Mia's was on the 25th. We'd always celebrated them separately, but this year, with all three of them turning 13, Judith proposed a big joint party. It would be so much more efficient, she declared one night while we were cleaning up after dinner, and it's such a milestone becoming a teenager. It should be a special occasion. Mark loved the idea, and I had to admit it made practical sense. One party, one cake, one set of decorations. It would certainly simplify things for the whole family. I took the lead on the planning, booking the local community center for the Saturday that fell right between their birthdays. I ordered a huge 3-tier cake with a different flavor for each of them. Chocolate for Lily, vanilla for Mason, and red velvet for Mia. I designed and sent out digital invitations to all their friends and family, and I even set up a shared document online so we could all pitch in with ideas for food and games. Rob and Jess agreed to be in charge of drinks and taking pictures, while Mark volunteered to handle the music and organize some games. Lily was practically vibrating with excitement about finally becoming a real teenager. She'd been talking about it for months. "Mom, when I'm 13, can I redecorate my room? I want something that's not so childish anymore," she asked me one morning. I happily agreed, and we started spending our evenings looking at paint swatches and browsing for affordable furniture to give her space a more grown-up feel. She had also brought up needing a new phone. Her old one was on its last legs, with a cracked screen and a battery that was dead by noon. It wasn't just a frivolous want. She genuinely needed a reliable one for school and for staying in touch with her friends. About 2 weeks before the party, I took Judith with me to shop for decorations. We were in an aisle comparing streamers when she suddenly looked at her watch and said, "Oh, I just remembered a quick errand I have to run. I'll meet you at the food court in an hour." I didn't think anything of it, not until later that afternoon when I overheard her on the phone with Rob. "Yes, I got them both. The newest model, just like we talked about. They're going to be absolutely thrilled," she said in a hushed, conspiratorial tone that immediately made my ears perk up. When she saw me standing in the doorway, she abruptly ended the call. "Just finalizing a few birthday details with Rob," she explained, waving her hand dismissively. That night at dinner, Lily was talking about her birthday wishes. "I'd really love some new art supplies, especially those professional colored pencils we saw at the art store, and maybe some new books." She paused for a second before adding, "And I know it's a lot, but my phone is really on its last legs. Even just a basic new one would be amazing." She looked around the table, her eyes full of hope landing on her grandmother. Judith barely looked up from her food. Art supplies. "How nice," was all she said, her voice completely flat. But just a few minutes later, when Mark mentioned the twins' upcoming birthday, she lit up. "What are Mason and Mia hoping for this year? Are they still into all those video games? Or maybe something a bit more sophisticated now that they're turning 13? The stark difference in her enthusiasm was impossible to miss, and I saw Lily's expression fall for just a moment before she quickly tried to hide her disappointment. Mark had been taking on extra summer school classes, and I knew why. He was working specifically to save up for a good gift for Lily. "I want to get her that phone," he told me late one night. "She deserves it, and she really does need it for her schoolwork." I agreed, though the cost did worry me. We'd been putting a little aside each month, and with his extra income, we could just about swing it, but it would be tight. Around that time, I met up with my friend Chloe for coffee and just let it all out, venting about the whole situation with Judith. "It's like she doesn't even see Lily," I confided. "Or even worse, it's like she sees her but has just decided she's not as worthy of her attention as the twins." Chloe, who dealt with her own difficult in-laws, gave me some solid advice. "You should start writing it down," she suggested. "Not to be dramatic, but just so you have clear, concrete examples next time you talk to Mark. Sometimes people can't see a pattern until it's laid out right in front of them." The weekend before the party, Lily and I were baking cookies together. As we were measuring out the flour, she looked up at me and said, "Do you think Grandma will like the thank you card I made her? I spent a really long time on it." The hopeful look in her eyes just about broke me. After years of these subtle put-downs, she was still trying so hard to win her grandmother's affection. "It's beautiful, honey," I told her, carefully sidestepping any promises about Judith's reaction. Anyone would be thrilled to get such a thoughtful card. Meanwhile, Judith's behavior was getting more and more secretive. Packages would arrive and she'd quickly whisk them away to her room. If I asked, she'd just say they were personal items, or just a few things Rob asked me to hold for him. She started taking all her phone calls in her room or out on the back porch, always hanging up quickly if anyone got near. It was strange, but with all the party planning, I was too distracted to push her on it. The night before the party, dinner was the Judith show, starring the twins. Mason made the varsity soccer team as a freshman. Can you believe it? And Ava's dance teacher thinks she should audition for that prestigious summer program in New York. On and on she went, barely even blinking when Lily quietly mentioned that she'd been chosen to display one of her paintings in the school lobby. I saw Lily just pushing her food around her plate, her appetite gone, but she forced a smile when our eyes met. I tried to steer the conversation back to her, but Judith just bulldozed right over me. The day of the party was a whirlwind. Mark and I took the afternoon off to go set up the community center. Lily came straight from school to help, carefully setting up a photo display I'd made with pictures of all 3 kids growing up. Judith showed up late, carrying several large shopping bags that she stashed in a back room without a word. Just a few last-minute surprises, she said when I asked. Rob and Jess dropped by for a quick look, the twins trailing behind them, their faces buried in their phones, only looking up when Judith called them over for big hugs and exclamations about how tall they'd gotten. As we were driving home that evening, tired but happy with our work, Lily was staring out the window, a dreamy look on her face. "Tomorrow is going to be the best day ever," she said, with such pure, innocent hope that I reached over and squeezed her hand. If I had only known what Judith had in store, maybe I could have prepared her, or maybe I could have stopped the heartbreak that was about to unfold. But in that moment, I shared my daughter's excitement, looking forward to a day of celebration with the people who loved her. The morning of the party arrived, bright and sunny, a perfect September Saturday. Lily was up at the crack of dawn, too excited to sleep. She'd laid out her outfit the night before, a new teal dress that made her eyes pop, a pair of silver sneakers, and the silver heart locket Mark and I had given her on her actual birthday earlier in the week. She spent a little extra time on her hair, trying out a new braided style she'd seen online. "How do I look, Mom?" she asked, doing a little twirl in front of me. "Absolutely beautiful," I told her honestly, every bit the teenager. We got to the community center an hour early. Mark got to work on the sound system while Lily and I added the final touches to the decorations. We'd turned the bland room into a festive space filled with blue, purple, and silver balloons, twinkling fairy lights, and 3 big poster boards covered in photos of each of the birthday kids. A long table was already lined with wrapped gifts from our side of the family, waiting for the big gift opening later. Rob and Jessica arrived with the twins right at 2 o'clock. Mason and Mia were in matching designer outfits that I'm pretty sure cost more than our entire party budget. Judith immediately started fussing over them, straightening Mason's collar and gushing over Mia's expensive shoes. Lily went over to them with a shy smile, clearly hoping for some of that warmth, but Judith just gave her a quick pat on the arm before turning her full attention back to the twins. A wave of guests arrived soon after, a mix of family, friends, and a swarm of teenagers who quickly took over the room. There was a photo booth with silly props, a karaoke machine, and a few different game stations. Lily moved between different groups of her friends, her initial shyness melting away into real, genuine fun. I caught Mark's eye from across the room, and we shared a relieved smile. Despite all the tension with Judith, the party was actually going well. The food table was a huge hit, with mini sliders, a make-your-own nacho bar, fruit skewers, and all sorts of desserts. Judith had insisted on bringing her famous deviled eggs, even though I knew none of the kids would touch them. And sure enough, her platter remained full while everything else disappeared. At 4:30, it was time for the cake. The massive 3-tiered creation was rolled out, with 13 candles glowing on each level. The crowd gathered around, phones held high to capture the moment. Lily, Mason, and Ava stood side by side behind the cake, with Lily in the middle. "Make a wish," I called out after we finished singing. The 3 of them looked at each other, took a big breath, and blew out their candles together. After the cake came the moment everyone was waiting for: opening presents. We set up 3 chairs at the front of the room, and the kids took their seats. They started with the gifts from their friends, taking turns opening packages of books, gift cards, and clothes. Lily got a beautiful new sketchbook from her best friend, a set of professional-grade art supplies from some classmates, and a stack of books from our neighbors. She thanked each person with genuine appreciation, her pile of gifts growing next to her. When they had opened most of the presents, Judith suddenly stood up and cleared her throat. "I have something special for the birthday children," she announced, her voice booming, drawing everyone's attention. She went into the back room and came back holding 2 identically wrapped boxes with huge, elaborate gold bows. They were the perfect size and shape for phones, and my stomach instantly clenched. "For my darling grandchildren, on this very special birthday," Judith proclaimed, handing a box to Mason and a box to Ava. The twins ripped open the wrapping paper, and 2 identical gasps filled the room as they pulled out brand new top-of-the-line Galaxy Horizon phones. The newest model that had just been released, These weren't just basic phones, they were the most expensive version, costing well over $1,000 each. "Grandma, no way!" Mason yelled, jumping up to hug her. "This is incredible! Thank you so much!" Ava gushed. The room was buzzing with excitement, but I was holding my breath, watching Lily. She was looking at her grandmother, her face a mixture of hope and confusion, waiting for a third box to appear. After all, there were 3 birthday kids. Finally, Lily spoke, her voice small but clear in the now quiet room. "Grandma, did you get something for me too?" Judith turned to look at Lily, and the expression on her face sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't apologetic or even embarrassed. It was cold, almost annoyed that she was being questioned. "That's all I have," she said flatly. "I only bought gifts for my real grandchildren." The silence that fell over the room was absolute. It felt like all 40 people had stopped breathing at once, unable to process what they had just heard. Lily's face just crumpled. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling. Judith just shrugged, a casual, cruel gesture. "You're not really part of the family, dear. Not by blood, anyway." It took me a second to even understand the words. Not by blood. The implication hit me like a physical punch. Judith was talking about Lily being adopted, a fact we had never hidden from anyone, but had certainly never used as a way to make her feel like less of a part of our family. We had adopted her as a newborn after years of struggling with infertility, and from the moment they placed her in our arms, she was our daughter, completely and unequivocally. The idea that Judith would use that against her was just monstrous. Tears welled up in Lily's eyes and started streaming down her face. She jumped up so fast that her chair clattered to the floor behind her, the noise echoing in the stunned silence. Then she turned and ran from the room, her shoulders shaking with sobs. I was right behind her, pausing only long enough to shoot Judith a look that I hoped conveyed just how far from over this was. I found Lily in the women's restroom, huddled in a corner with her knees pulled up to her chest. Her carefully done makeup was a mess of black streaks, her joy from earlier completely gone. "Oh, sweetheart," I said, kneeling down and pulling her into a hug. She just collapsed against me, her whole body shaking with sobs. "Why does she hate me, Mom?" she choked out. "What did I ever do to her?" "Nothing, baby. You did absolutely nothing wrong," I whispered, stroking her hair. "Grandma is the one with the problem, not you. You are our daughter in every single way that matters." Yeah. After a few minutes, I helped her clean her face and fix her hair. "We can leave right now if you want," I offered, "or we can go back out there and show Grandma that her words can't break you." I knew it was unfair to ask that of a 13-year-old, but I wanted to give her the choice. Lily took a deep, shaky breath. "I want to go home," she whispered, "but I should probably say bye to my friends first." When we walked back into the main room, the entire atmosphere had shifted. Mark was standing nose to nose with his mother, his face red with a fury I had rarely ever seen. My husband is a calm man, but there was no mistaking his rage. "How could you say that to her?" he was demanding. "How could you be so cruel to a child? Any child, let alone my daughter." Judith just stood there with her arms crossed, completely unrepentant. "I was just speaking the truth, Mark. The girl is adopted. She's not a blood relative. Mason and Ava are my actual grandchildren." Rob and Jessica were hovering nearby, looking extremely uncomfortable. The twins, however, were off in a corner showing their new phones to their friends, either completely oblivious to the drama or deliberately ignoring it. Most of the other guests were already grabbing their things, clearly eager to get away from the thick tension. The party was officially over. I steered Lily around the edge of the room, helping her gather her gifts and say quick goodbyes. Her best friend gave her a fierce hug and whispered something that actually made Lily crack a small, watery smile. The drive home was suffocatingly silent. Judith had ridden with us to the party, but Rob had offered to drive her back to our house later, obviously trying to de-escalate the immediate situation. Mark gripped the steering wheel the entire way, his knuckles white. his eyes occasionally flicking to the rearview mirror to look at Lily, who just stared out the window, completely drained. As we pulled into our driveway, I put my hand on Mark's arm. "We have to talk about what happens now," I said quietly. He just nodded, his face grim. We both knew it. Everything had just changed, and there was no going back to pretending that everything was fine. Judith had finally shown us who she really was in the most public and cruel way possible, and now we had to deal with the consequences. That night, Lily went straight to her room the second we got home and locked the door. I knocked gently a few times, offering to bring her something to eat, but she just texted me that she wanted to be alone. I gave her space, but I kept my ear pressed to her door, listening for any sounds of distress. Mark and I ended up in our bedroom, where the conversation I had been dreading finally happened. "I can't believe she would say something so unbelievably heartless," I said, pacing back and forth while Mark sat on the edge of the bed with his head in his hands. "Actually," I corrected myself, "I can believe it. The signs have been there for years, but this was just beyond anything I could have imagined." "She's getting older, Sarah," Mark said, his voice weak. Maybe she didn't mean it the way it came out. I stopped pacing and just stared at him. "Are you serious right now? I only got gifts for my real grandchildren. You're not really part of the family." "How else could she have possibly meant that, Mark? Please explain it to me." He let out a long, heavy sigh, his shoulders slumping in defeat. I know, it was inexcusable. It's just, she's my mother, Sarah. I've never seen her act like this." "Really? Never?" I challenged him. "What about last Christmas when she got the twins those expensive new gaming consoles and got Lily a $5 journal from the discount store? Or when she drove 2 hours to go to Mason's baseball game but said she was too tired to go to Lily's art show, which was 10 minutes from our house? What about all the times she's forgotten Lily's favorite food but can list off every single one of the twins' favorite snacks? This has been happening for years, Mark. The only difference is that today," she finally said the quiet part out loud. Mark was quiet for a long time, just letting my words sink in. "I guess I didn't want to see it," he finally admitted. "It was easier to make excuses for her than to admit my own mother could be so prejudiced." Around 11, I heard soft sobs coming from Lily's room. I knocked gently on her door. "Sweetheart, can I come in?" After a moment, I heard the lock click. I went in and found her curled up on her bed, clutching a stuffed bunny she'd claimed years ago was too childish but had never managed to get rid of. I sat down next to her and just stroked her hair, waiting for her to talk. "Why doesn't Grandma love me, Mom?" she finally asked, and the question felt like a knife in my chest. "Is it because I'm not really yours?" "Listen to me," I said, my voice firm, tilting her chin up so she was looking at me. "You are really ours, in every single way that counts. Biology does not make a family, love does. Grandma is wrong. Her inability to see that says everything about her and absolutely nothing about you." She nodded, but I could see that my words, as much as she appreciated them, couldn't erase the wound Judith had inflicted. We talked until she finally cried herself to sleep. I tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and quietly left the room. The next morning, Judith came downstairs and acted as if nothing had happened. She complained that the coffee was too strong and asked what our plans were for the day, as if the party had been a smashing success. Mark and I just looked at each other over our mugs, a silent understanding passing between us that this confrontation was coming, whether we wanted it to or not. "Mom," Mark started, putting his cup down, "we need to talk about what you said to Lily yesterday." Judith just waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, is she still upset about that? Children are just so sensitive these days. In my day, we were taught to be tougher." "You told my daughter she wasn't part of this family," Mark said, his voice low and tight. "You deliberately and publicly humiliated her while lavishing expensive gifts on her cousins. How exactly was she supposed to toughen up about that?" "I'm sorry if her feelings were hurt," Judith said dramatically, but it wasn't an apology. "But facts are facts, Mark. The girl is adopted. Mason and Ava are my blood." "Her name is Lily," I cut in, my own anger flaring. "Not the girl, Lily, and she has been our daughter since she was 3 days old." The conversation ended there, with Lily coming downstairs, her eyes puffy from crying. Later that day, I was doing laundry when I found a receipt in the pocket of Judith's pants. It was from an electronics store for 2 Galaxy Horizon phones, totaling over $3,000. The date on it was from 2 weeks ago. It had been planned all along. It wasn't a last-minute decision. It was a calculated move to publicly humiliate my child. And what was even more disturbing was the realization that Judith clearly had a substantial amount of money, despite the story she'd told us about her financial struggles. $3,000 for phones was not a small purchase for someone who was supposedly living on a shoestring budget. What other lies had she been telling us? Over the next few days, Lily completely withdrew. She started eating her meals in her room and would avoid the living room if Judith was in there. The vibrant, creative girl who usually filled our house with chatter and laughter had gone silent. On Wednesday, I got a call from her school counselor. "Mrs. Miller, I just wanted to check in about Lily. She's been very quiet in her classes, and her English teacher said she hasn't been turning in her work, which is not like her at all." My simmering anger began to boil over. That evening, I confronted Judith with the receipt. "You spent over $3,000 on phones for the twins, but you couldn't get anything for Lily. And all this time, you've been telling us you can barely afford your prescriptions?" Judith's face hardened. "My money is my own business, Sarah. I can spend it however I like, and I choose to spend it on my actual grandchildren." "While living rent-free in our house," I pointed out, "eating our food, using our utilities." "Mark invited me to live here," she shot back. "If you have a problem with that, maybe you should talk to your husband." The final straw came a week after the party. Lily had reluctantly joined us for dinner. As she was quietly asking to be excused, Judith scoffed. "Running away again. You're far too sensitive, just like your mother. It's no wonder you have trouble fitting in." Lily's eyes filled with tears as she fled the table. Mark slammed his napkin down. "That's enough, Mom. You have gone way too far." As Mark went upstairs to comfort Lily, I just sat there staring at my mother-in-law, and in that moment a strange calm washed over me. This woman was toxic. She was a poison in our home, and she was destroying my child's sense of self-worth. Something had to change, and it had to happen now. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake for hours, my mind racing. Around 3 a.m, I got up, went downstairs, and opened my laptop. I spent the rest of the night researching emotional abuse, setting family boundaries, and the long-term impact of toxic relationships on children. Everything I read just confirmed what my gut was screaming at me. Letting this continue would cause irreparable damage to my daughter. When Mark came downstairs at 6:30, he found me still at the kitchen table. "You've been up all night," he said, his voice full of concern. "Mark, we need to deal with your mother," I said, my voice steady. "This situation is completely unsustainable. What it's doing to Lily is just too much." He nodded slowly, pouring himself a coffee. "I know, I've been thinking about it nonstop. What she said at the party and then again last night. It's unforgivable." "It's more than that," I told him. "It's a pattern that's been getting worse for years. The party was just the loudest and most public example. If we don't do something now, Lily is going to grow up believing that she is somehow less deserving of love just because she's adopted." Mark closed his eyes, the pain clear on his face. "What do you want to do?" "Your mother needs to leave our home," I said, the words feeling both terrifying and liberating. "I know this is incredibly difficult, but our first and most important job is to protect our daughter." To my immense relief, he didn't argue. "You're right," he said, his voice heavy. "I've been torn between being a good son and being a good father, but seeing how much this is destroying our daughter, there's no choice. Lily has to come first." We spent the next hour making a plan. After Lily left for school, I would be the one to have the conversation with Judith. Before she left, I called my own mom, who has always been my voice of reason. "You're doing the right thing, Sarah," she told me. "No child should ever be made to feel unwelcome in their own home. Be firm, but be calm. This is about protecting Lily, not punishing Judith." At 11 o'clock, Judith returned from her grocery shopping. I helped her put everything away, and then I asked her to sit down for a coffee. "There's something important we need to discuss," I said, keeping my voice as neutral as I could. I sat down across from her, my hands wrapped around my mug to keep them from shaking. "Judith," I started calmly, "I want to talk about what happened at the party and the comments you've been making to Lily." She rolled her eyes. "Are we still on about that? I thought we were past it." "No, we're not past it," I said firmly. "What you said was cruel and untrue. You told our daughter she wasn't part of this family." "I was simply stating a biological fact," she replied, sipping her coffee. "The girl is not related to me by blood. It's a matter of genetics." "Family is about love and commitment, not DNA," I countered. "And to announce your outdated views at her 13th birthday party while giving her cousins $1,000 gifts was deliberately and profoundly hurtful." "Children are coddled," she sniffed. "Perhaps if you'd raised her differently, she wouldn't be so sensitive. Though I suppose, given her unknown background, certain tendencies are to be expected." I had to count to 5 before I could speak. "What exactly do you mean by that?" She leaned forward, clearly pleased that she'd gotten a reaction. "Let's be honest, Sarah. I never thought Mark should have married you in the first place. You come from a very different social background, and then to adopt a child of unknown origin instead of trying for a biological child, well, it's not what I would have advised." The mask was completely off. I was momentarily speechless at the raw prejudice in her words. "Your granddaughter is a kind, creative, brilliant person," I said, my voice now like steel. "The fact that you can't see that because you're obsessed with some bizarre, outdated notion of breeding says everything about your character and nothing about hers." "I see Mark has failed to teach you proper respect for your elders," she sneered. "But then, given your background, perhaps that's to be expected." I took a deep breath. This conversation is over. There's only one way you can continue to live in this house. You need to sincerely apologize to Lily for what you said at the party, and you need to commit to treating her with the same love and respect you show Mason and Mia. Her response was instant and unapologetic. "I have nothing to apologize for. The truth is the truth. The girl is not my blood relative, and I am under no obligation to pretend otherwise." I nodded slowly. I had gotten the answer I knew I would get. "In that case," I said, my voice calm but unwavering, "I need you to pack your things and leave our home. You have 24 hours. Judith's eyes widened in genuine shock. "Excuse me, you have 24 hours to pack your bags and find somewhere else to live," I repeated. "This is not up for debate." "This is Mark's house, too," she sputtered. "You can't just kick me out." "Mark and I have already discussed this," I informed her. "He agrees that your presence here is toxic for our daughter and that you need to leave." "This is preposterous. Where am I supposed to go?" "You have options," I said coolly. "Rob has a guest room. Or you could use some of that money you spent on those phones to get a hotel until you find your own place. The choice is yours. But you will not be living here after tomorrow morning." Her face flushed with rage. "You can't do this to me. I'm an elderly woman." "You are a 67-year-old woman in perfect health who has been emotionally abusing a child while taking advantage of our kindness," I corrected her. "And yes, I absolutely can ask you to leave my home." She immediately grabbed her phone. "Mark will hear about this." "Yes, he will," I agreed. "In fact, he's expecting your call." 20 minutes later, Mark walked through the front door. "Thank goodness you're here," Judith cried, rushing to him. Sarah has lost her mind. She's threatening to throw me out on the street." Mark led us into the living room. He turned to his mother. "Mom, is it true that you said Lily isn't really family because she's adopted?" "I was just stating the obvious," she defended herself. "And did you also say that Sarah comes from the wrong social background and that Lily has unknown origins?" James pressed, his voice hardening. She hesitated. "I may have expressed some concerns about family standards." "The best for our family," Mark said, shaking his head, "would be having a grandmother who loves all her grandchildren equally, not one who ranks them based on their biology." Seeing that her tears weren't working on Mark, she called Rob, who soon arrived with Jessica for a tense family summit. "So you're kicking Mom out because she bought my kids phones and not Lily?" Rob asked, trying to get a handle on the situation. "No," I clarified. "We are asking her to leave because she publicly humiliated our daughter and has consistently undermined her sense of self-worth." Jessica, who had been quiet, spoke up. "Eleanor, I've noticed it too," she said softly. "The way you talk about the kids, it's very different." After nearly 2 hours of back and forth, Rob offered a compromise. "Mom can stay with us for a while she looks for a place." "This isn't about coming to my senses," I stated firmly. "This is a permanent boundary. Eleanor is welcome to visit our home in the future if she demonstrates real change and gives a sincere apology to Lily, but she will not be living with us again." Just as they were getting ready to leave, Lily came home from school. We took her aside and gently explained the situation. "Grandma is going to be moving out to stay with Uncle Rob and Aunt Jess for a while." "Because of what happened at the party?" she asked, her voice small. "Because of me?" "No, sweetheart," I said, pulling her close. "Not because of you, because of Grandma's choices. Adults are responsible for their own actions." Later that evening, while Judith was making a big show of packing her things, I took Lily out. "Let's go get those art supplies you wanted," I suggested. At the art store, I told her to get whatever she wanted. Afterward, at an ice cream shop, I looked at her and said, "You know that family isn't about blood, right? It's about love. It's about who shows up for you every single day." She nodded slowly. "I know. It just hurts that Grandma doesn't see it that way." "Some people have very rigid ideas about family," I explained, "but those ideas are wrong. You are our daughter in every way that matters, and nothing and no one can ever change that." The next morning, Rob arrived to help his mother with her things. Before she left for school, Lily walked over to her grandmother. "Goodbye, Grandma," she said softly. "I hope you'll be comfortable at Uncle Rob's." Judith's response was ice cold. "Goodbye, Lily." No hug, no smile, no remorse. After the car disappeared down the street, Mark let out a long breath. "I never thought it would come to this," he said, "having to choose between my mother and my daughter." I squeezed his hand. "You didn't choose between them. Your mother forced this. You just chose to protect Lily, which is what a good father does." The house immediately felt lighter, as if a heavy, dark cloud had finally lifted. That night, we had dinner, just the three of us for the first time in 2 years. Laughter returned to our table. Afterward, Mark sat with Lily on the couch. "I owe you an apology," he said to her. "I should have seen what was happening sooner. I should have protected you better." Lily just leaned against him. "It's okay, Dad. It's complicated." "Being complicated is no excuse for hurting someone you love," he replied. "I want you to know that you are the most important person in the world to your mom and me. We chose you. We wanted you. And absolutely nothing makes you any less our daughter." In the weeks that followed, we learned that Judith's stay with Rob and Jessica was already causing friction. We started family therapy where our therapist, Dr. Martinez, helped us process everything. She named what had happened for what it was, a form of emotional abuse. Naming it helped validate Lily's experience and allowed her to start healing. Her recovery was slow, but it was steady. The light came back into her eyes. She started drawing again, her creativity flowing freely now that she wasn't constantly bracing for criticism. About 6 months after Judith left, Lily's art teacher selected one of her paintings for the district-wide student art show. The painting depicted a young girl at a crossroads, with paths stretching out before her. Her artist's statement read, "Sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most beautiful destinations." Judith didn't come to the exhibition, but Rob, Jessica, and the twins did. They made a real effort to support Lily, asking her questions about her work. It was a small step towards building a different kind of relationship, one not defined by their grandmother's prejudice. As I watched my daughter confidently explaining her art to a small crowd, her face lit up with passion. I knew we had made the right decision. The pain had been immense, but in standing up for Lily, we had given her the space she needed to truly flourish. "I know my worth now, Mom," she told me one evening as we were looking through her sketchbook. "I know that family is about who loves you, not whose DNA you share." The wisdom in her voice brought tears to my eyes. Through all the pain, she had emerged stronger, with a deeper understanding of what truly matters. I would love to hear your stories about family in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to hear more about navigating these complex family dynamics and standing up for what's right. Thank you for listening, and always remember that sometimes the family we choose is even more important than the family we are born into.